Welcome to Soul of Travel, Women's Wisdom and Mindful Travel. I'm your host, Christine Winebrenner Irick. Each week, you'll hear me having soulful conversations with women who are tourism professionals, trailblazers, and community leaders around the world. They share their personal and professional journeys to inspire you, and their stories teach you how to become a more conscious traveler, live life aligned with your values, and create a positive impact. We are thought leaders, action takers, and heart-centered change makers, and this is the Soul of Travel. JoAnna Haugen is an award-winning writer, speaker, consultant, and solutions advocate. She is also the founder of Rooted, a solutions platform at the intersection of sustainable and regenerative tourism practices, social impact, and storytelling. Through Rooted, JoAnna works with destinations, travel brands, tour operators, media and travel writers, and tourism professionals from around the world to unlock the power of strategic storytelling and tourism communications that shine a light on responsible tourism and destination stewardship. JoAnna's work has been published in more than 60 print and online publications, including Afar, Adventure.com, Fast Company, USA Today, BBC Travel, Travel Age West, and Manga Bay. In 2021, Newsweek named JoAnna a winner in the storytelling category of its Future of Tourism Awards. She's also been nominated for 3 Bessie Awards, Collaboration of the Year in 2021, and Most Impactful Piece of Writing in 2021 and 2022, and has been recognized by the Inspire Global Media Awards as well. In our conversation, JoAnna and I discuss connecting with our authentic self and expressing that in our businesses and on social media, and the challenges we faced along the way. We also share the challenges we've had in embodying our travel values, and explore the ways that those barriers keep more travelers from being able to travel responsibly, and how we can make choosing responsible travel a more frictionless experience. We also discuss how we can get ourselves outside of our comfort zone in our business, learn from other industries, and find ways to get the aha moments in front of the travelers and professionals who need that awareness instead of speaking to those who already share similar viewpoints. I ask all my guests to share 3 words to describe themselves. JoAnna chose Curious Citizen of the World. Join me now for this Return to Soul of Travel episode and my soulful conversation with JoAnna Haugen. Welcome to Soul of Travel podcast. I'm very excited to be kicking off a special series here. It's a Return to Soul of Travel. So I'm speaking with past guests, and we're going to reconnect with them and hear a little bit about their journey since the last time they've been here. So we're beginning that series with JoAnna Haugen, who is the founder of Rooted and one of my very favorite people to connect with in the industry. So this is always super special for me to have you here. For those of you listening, if you want to hear more about her and kind of her origin story with Rooted, I'm going to direct you back to episode 22, which seems so long ago. We shared that back in May of 2021. I'm so happy to have you here today to bring another conversation here to this space.
Oh, it's so wonderful to be here with you again, Christine. 2021 seems like both yesterday and ages ago. So here we are.
Yeah. I feel like if you asked me what was happening in 2021 at this point, I couldn't tell you. I could probably tell you what was happening in 1994 better. Like it was such a blur.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would love to just kind of begin our conversation with reflecting on that space between then and now with what we can remember. But if you want to share anything that for you and your business and your journey that feels really valuable to share with our listeners, maybe things you've learned, successes you want to celebrate, or anything along those lines?
Yeah, it seems like a long time ago since we chatted, and reflecting on my own journey over that time, it feels like I have both grown professionally, my business has grown professionally, but also that it hasn't gone necessarily the directions I wanted it to go or as far as I wanted it to go. I've been reflecting actually on the things that I still very much want to do and that, kind of got put on the back burner. And now we're months and years down the line. And so I've been actually thinking a lot about the direction of my business. And I'm proud of the relationships that I've made over the years. I'm excited by some of the work that I've done. But one of the things that I've realized is a challenge in the tourism industry, and I imagine it's true in any industry, is that it can begin to feel really stagnant when we stay in just this space, just our silo with the same people, the same ideas, the same conversations. And so one of the things that I've always done, but I've been making more of a concerted effort to do is to be in other spaces, to read widely across genres, to listen to podcasts that are touching on issues that are kind of tangential to tourism, whether that's curiosity or museum curation or agriculture, these kinds of things. And I've been attending events that are not tourism specific as well. And that's been also really rejuvenating actually for me, to just have conversations with people who are thinking about important ideas but not in the space that we are always inhabiting.
Yeah, I love that idea. And I think we can learn so much about tourism when you kind of lay other perspectives on top of it. And I agree, like, I feel like you get very comfortable. And so it's really easy to stay there. But then when we're both kind of, I guess, disruptors, if you will, you need to look where to see where the disruption is coming from. And I think it's very helpful to have those other perspectives. A few years ago, I participated in something called the Vital Voices Fellowship, which was a fellowship for a year with, I think it was around 60 women, and they were from all around the world. I think there was 30 some countries, a lot of women from different African countries, a lot of different types of business, but the through line was that they were all working to create impact and social impact founded. And I felt like that was so valuable because I was learning from all these other business owners and their challenges and ideas, but also learning, like you said, like there was people working in agriculture, there was people working in gender equity, there was people working in all these different areas, and the overlap and the way we could support each other was really, really valuable.
Yeah.
So I think that's a great lesson for people to. It's hard when we don't have a lot of time, but I think it's a great way to actually make the most of our time.
Yeah. And I think that the ideas that surface from conversations of people who are working in similar but different spaces, we have so much that we can learn from other sectors, other disruptors, thinkers, creators in other spaces. So yeah, absolutely valuable. I love the idea of, this group of women who are, spanning social impact across the world, across different spaces. I think we need to give ourselves permission to be in more of those spaces because we feel, we have to do the work, we have to stay in our space, we have to stay in our lane. And I think I think that does us more harm than good actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the other thing was really valuable is the reflection on my business from people who don't know my business.
Exactly.
So, it was so helpful because also they would get fired up about it in a way that maybe people that know businesses similar. And I was working with Lotus Sojourns, which is my
Mhm,
my
mhm.
travel company in that container. Um, so people would be like, wow, I haven't heard of a like social impact and gender equity focused travel company before. That sounds incredible. Whereas I know several people, who have those businesses. So it was really reaffirming and just kind of great to feel that reflected back on me, but then for them to be able to ask questions because they didn't already know the answers or didn't think they know the answers. That was a really powerful process too. So I think for people starting out in their business or wanting to maybe grow in a different direction, that kind of a space is really, really powerful. I think this leads really well into one of the things you and I were talking about is kind of balancing purpose and energy and how we determine where to put our energy in our business and kind of also balancing that with having a very heart-led business in a time that feels where our footing is really being taken out from underneath us. I think like all of those are pieces that we're struggling with, you and I, but collectively many of us are struggling with that. So I'd love to kind of dig into that.
Yeah. I feel like with each passing day, for me at least, I ask myself if where I'm putting my energy is the best place, if I'm making or still making the impact I hope to have on this world. I often, I probably spend too much of my time thinking about this idea that, in 2021, when we had our last conversation, there was a lot of conversation in our space about building back better. And here we are today where tourism is like accelerating at this in absolutely insane rates, and we're dealing with over tourism in Antarctica. And I just I asked myself, what happened to build back better? What happened to breaking down the system that was harming people, harming environments, and rebuilding one that was more equitable, accessible, sustainable, all of these things instead of, still focusing on all the old KPIs. And so I do ask myself, like, did I not speak loud enough? Did I not do enough? Am I still doing enough? Do I still belong here? And I have to still have hope, because if I didn't have hope, there would be no reason for me to still show up. And certainly I have had a few moments where I've been like, I don't know, is this the day where I throw it all in? And there have been moments where I questioned whether it was still worth my time and energy showing up. And then there are people or a conversation or something that happens that says to me, no, you're still supposed to be here. So I'm still showing up because I do have hope. I have to have hope for our ecosystem that we work in, for the world that we live in, for the conversations that we still have, the gatherings we still inhabit. But it is, I feel like every day, especially with all that's going on politically and the climate and all this, that it is hard to know where to place our energy and to know if it's still worth putting our energy in a place where it sometimes feels like it's not worth it. It's hard. It's hard to be a small business owner right now. It's hard to be leading with empathy. It's hard to care some days, but we have kids coming up behind us who need us to still show up. We have people who aren't in a place of privilege who need us to show up. And so as long as I'm able to, I'm committed to showing up.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's really important, and this will be a perfect segue into the next part of our conversation, but I think it's really important to be honest about that feeling too, because I think so many of us get buried under that moment where you really don't know if it's worth it. And it is hard. You and I both work alone in our business most of the time, to just keep fighting when it feels like a fight, right? And I feel like recently, I just went to a retreat where we were kind of talking about service, the idea of service through suffering or sacrifice versus service through joy. And I was like, aha, I feel like when I'm carrying this big, huge sword, I'm buying right into this kind of idea of service through suffering, or I'm contributing to that energetic space versus through joy. And not meaning that like service through joy means I'm always joyful and everything is easy and joyous, but that the joy comes from my alignment in what I'm doing and what I want to create for who I want to serve. So just like what you said is that touch point of this is who I'm here for and why I'm doing it. And that, even though the action is hard, like changes it to something that fills your cup up instead of something that empties it.
Mm.
And so I really keep trying to bring myself to that reframe. And my other and like picture in my mind is like putting the sword down and picking up light and like trying to, because that's what I want there to be in the world, you know? And I feel like if I'm my, like, I guess, feminist warrior self, like, she really wants that sword. She really wants to, like,
Yeah.
be done with this stuff already. But
Yeah.
I guess internally I'm realizing how much that's not healthy to me or anybody else.
Yeah.
So I think that this is something that's really important to talk about and to support each other through and to have like lifelines for with people who believe in what you do.
Mhm.
Because I know for you, like if you ever texted me and you're like, I think this is it, this is the last day, I would just be like, I will always stand beside you and behind you. And yet, like, I believe in your voice and your vision. And then maybe that's enough for you to be like, okay, today I'm going to sit down, but tomorrow I can
Yeah.
move forward. So I think these are all really important things in our businesses and in our lives.
Yeah. And it makes me think of that saying when we fly to put your own mask on first before you help other people. And I feel like, honestly, as women, especially, we have kind of been trained to sacrifice for everybody else first, to show up for everybody else first. But if we don't show up for ourselves and really check in with ourselves and take that time to be aware and mindful of what we need and why we're still showing up the way we do, then how can we ever best serve and be present for all those people in the organizations that we want to be here for?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard.
And in this thread as well, like for instance, we're recording this conversation in March. My original intention was to have this air basically next week and have a quick turnaround and jump into the series. And I'm feeling really burnt out right now. And I've been having some issues with migraines and things that just need me to sit still.
Mm.
And so I had to say, okay, how do I give myself space and still kind of create momentum? And so I'm doing some replays, but hopefully with some fun introductions from our listeners and their perspectives, so like I can both take a breath and be of service. And so I think it was really hard to give myself that permission.
Yeah.
Is really what I'm saying. Like it felt impossible, and yet like once I decided, it was done and it was easy. So I think, like you said, this idea, especially as women, that we just can't like take our foot off the gas for a minute or everything slides away, um, is very hard to live with. And
Yeah.
I do think in some ways it's true, and yet if we have nothing left to give, it's done anyway. So
Yeah.
like we have to do that.
Yeah. I would love to reflect on one other thing with that too, is I feel like we are under so much pressure to keep showing up constantly and consistently because of algorithms too. And I mean, it's a lot of pressure on women to show up and be present all the time. But then we have these other outside forces, namely technology and these algorithms that are like, well, if you don't, consistently post at 10 a.m. on Instagram every day, well, we're just gonna, I don't even know all the terminology, but essentially just like not show your stuff to anybody. And then when you come back, it takes a long, long time to show up, because I knew one of the key facets of what we're told about how to run a successful business is to show up consistently and, in the same way at the same time so that people can rely on you. And, you had asked me about any changes with my business. I went from publishing 2 articles a month and I stepped back to doing one a month. And then late last year in 2024, I was like, I just need a break to just take a look at what I'm doing and see if it's even what I still want to do, all this that we've been talking about. So I like didn't publish new articles. I didn't do the same amount of posting on social media or whatever. And it hurts. Like, I lost subscribers, I lost followers, nobody's seeing my content. It's taking me forever to come back. And I'm like, there's pressure from ourselves, first and foremost. There is pressure from society on us as women. And then, unfortunately, there is pressure on us from the never-ending noise, from technology. And to be a creator, to have a small business, being everywhere all the time consistently is just not sustainable.
Yeah. Okay, so the next bucket of conversation I had for us is social media and like balancing authenticity with duty, which is great because kind of what we were talking about here. And for instance, I really enjoy following you on LinkedIn because I admire your presence there and I appreciate the conversations and the way you show up. I think social media can be an incredible tool for education and connection, but it also can be a place that fosters distrust and distance, can distance people. And then in the travel industry, there's like this other layer of complexity because if you're marketing anything, you have to like be the best and the shiniest and show the best parts of the destination because you're literally trying to sell the thing or sell yourself. And then there's like this catch-22 because this is what traditional media models and marketing want you to do. People will discover the truth, right? They're going to get to the destination and see the over tourism, or they're going to see how climate is impacting the destination. They're going to see all these different aspects of the truth we didn't tell them to get them there in the first place, or about ourselves, which then like deepens the distrust and takes people out of reality or puts them in reality. I don't know exactly which one is happening, but I would love to talk to you about kind of what you wrestle with in this idea of how to show up, when to show up, which we kind of talked about a little bit already, and how to really create more equitable content that is aligned with what we want to create in the world. And yeah, let's kind of see where this goes.
Yeah.
I know you're like, whoa, that's a lot.
Not a heavy question at all, Christine. Yes, and more and yes to everything you just said there. That's really part of what's at the heart of my work is the importance of not turning places into backdrops and not commodifying people as just this nice thing that our visitors bump into, and the importance of taking the time to create connections and let serendipity happen and all these things. I get it. There's this catch-22 of tourism marketing, but I feel like we're not doing anybody any favors. We're setting up inappropriate expectations. We're not giving people the full truth. We're not empowering travelers, quite frankly, to be positive change makers when they travel if we are just like, yeah, go on holiday, lay on the beach, have a great time. This is your beautiful sunny place. And people end up frustrated and not getting the experience they think they're going to have when if we tell them there is actually a water shortage issue here, you could actually contribute to like being a change maker and not contributing to that. You could pick up garbage on the beach. You could participate in things so that you do become a better global citizen. And, we know more and more people all the time believe in climate change. We know people realize that we are living in a very complicated and messy world. And tourism is this incredible vehicle that we can use to engage people when they are visiting somewhere new in these issues. So instead of shying away from it, I actually see it as a huge opportunity to bring people into conversation and do what is, what I call, or what I've gone through training known as complicating the narrative, and really being willing to grapple in complexity. I was at an event this weekend actually where there was conversation about the need to disrupt the status quo. And it was not a tourism event, it was a different kind of event, but we're talking about the need to disrupt the status quo and make systemic changes in parts of society that are broken. And the speaker said, we need to embrace complexity. We exoticize simplicity. And it is absolutely true that, we make it grossly romantic to be walking through the world, through a two-dimensional world as a traveler. I mean, we're setting people up to become irresponsible people when they travel, when we don't communicate with them in a meaningful way. We're not empowering people to be better, stewards of the land. And so I see it not as a way to disrupt somebody's holiday or take away their dream. But honestly, I think more people, and again, studies show this, people care. They want to do something, or at the very least, they want to know, what little things can I do, or can I incorporate when I travel? So, showing up authentically, I think means really letting all of us be our authentic selves. And that includes the travelers who maybe want to be more than just this caricature.
Yeah. Um, I'm trying to go back through everything you just said. I knew this is always hard for you and I because we get through like so many ideas in one paragraph. So now I'm like, where do I go next? Yeah, I just think the idea of the complexity is really important, and it to me feels, and this is what I always felt like and grappled with as a young traveler, is that I felt the complexity, but I didn't have the tools to communicate it. And I don't know if we had talked about this in the past, but Dr. Anu Taranath's book was one of those. When I read it, I was like, here's the words I always needed to explain these experiences I was having when I was traveling that didn't feel right. And I was experiencing it anyway. I just wasn't able to process and understand. So many of our travelers who think they're out there having this two-dimensional experience, if that's how we want to kind of depict this, the other stuff is coming in and they don't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
And so I think, like you said, it's not fair. Also, it's not fair to expect, this feels like a big sentence. It's not fair to expect that I can go somewhere to have this holiday without acknowledging anything else that's happening where I am. It is such a place of privilege to be that assumptive about the experience you get to have. And for me, I hated when I would be put in that place where someone would be telling me to have this kind of superficial surface flowery experience, and I would just be like, this to me, it's just not okay. I can't look the other way, and I know that's very much who I am as a person. So that can be super challenging anyway, but it just felt so wrong for me. And so I think there's more travelers like that out there than we know, and it really is this idea of education and just giving them the tools for being able to say, I experienced an uncomfortable power dynamic while I was traveling. Like for me, that was the thing. I was like, oh, that is what I was seeing
Mhm.
all the time. And it was breaking my heart, but I didn't know what to say. And I would try to communicate that, and people would just be very confused. And I think we've really grown as a society to have some of these deeper conversations, but I think they need to keep moving into tourism, because tourism is the place where humans connect with one another. And
Yeah.
it's like the best place to have these conversations.
Yeah, absolutely agree with you. I admit there are two things I think are important is one, travelers don't know what they don't know. So if we who do know, whether that be destinations, tour operators, whoever on the industry side, media, um, choose to gatekeep that information essentially and not share it, how can we ever expect travelers to know? You know, we might think, oh, well, that will put a damper on their holiday, or that's not really tourism. Although, I mean, tourism is injected into all parts of society, quite frankly. So it is all relevant. But travelers don't know what they don't know. We can't expect them to know without saying something. And along those lines, number two is we have the language now, because I agree with you. I have definitely, in my early days of travel, um, there are things I look back on that I would say I'm ashamed that I participated in, that I unknowingly like was in a very inappropriate environment or whatever, but I didn't have the language. We have that language now. Power dynamics, white saviorism, commodification. We have these words, and we have a responsibility to use them. If we know them, we need to use them, and we need to equip travelers with that information so that then the travelers do know what it is and what to do about it, how to reflect upon it, and again, how to react in a way that no longer harms the environment, that no longer hurts the people that they interact with when they travel. I love Dr. Tarnath's book. I think it's a fantastic tool. I know it was written for students, but I think honestly it should be required reading for anybody in the tourism industry, and quite frankly, anybody who's traveling. It is essential reading in my mind because it gives people the language for something that we have not had the language for before.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm trying to decide which one's the chicken and the egg here, but I'm going to start with embodying kind of what we believe in and how difficult that is. And then maybe after that, we'll look at how do we make it less difficult. And I know for me, one of these things, so if my value is gender equity when I travel, how do I make that happen? And I remember when I went to Switzerland a few years ago, I was like, how easy would this be for me to do this thing that I believe in, that I'm telling people to do, right? So when I was looking for a hotel to stay at in Zurich, I Googled like women-owned hotels, or I was just trying to see where I could get and
Yeah.
support this. And crazily enough, and I don't expect that this would happen everywhere, but I found a chain of hotels that actually started with a guest house for women, where eventually one floor of the guest house was made available to women who were victims of domestic violence. That eventually evolved into a program where they were training women to work in the hospitality industry, and then they opened several other properties. I was like, absolutely, this is 1000%
Yeah.
aligned with my values as a traveler. This is where I want my money to go. Again, like I said, is this going to happen every
No.
time I travel? This was magic. This
Yeah,
was
it
pure
is.
magic, showing me, what could be possible. It was very hard to do that. I know for you, you recently moved and you had an overland move because this was aligned with your values. You were also kind of trying to play in this space of, can I do what I'm saying I want to do? And similarly, when it didn't work a few years ago, I was traveling with my daughters. It was supposed to be for a full year. It ended up being for about 4 or 5 months. And my thought had been, once I land in Europe, and I was going to London for a conference, then I didn't want to fly again until I left Europe to go to Egypt. It was absolutely impossible. And believe me, I tried. I even contacted Eurorail. Rail was expensive. It was sold out. It was impossible without a huge budget. And, a few years ago, that would have been very easy, but it had changed because of the post-COVID travel habits in Europe and all these things. And a multitude of other things happened over that trip that really showed me some of the ways that it is hard to put this into action.
Mhm.
So I would love to kind of talk about embodying our values as travelers.
Yeah, it is not easy. Um, and I think for me at least, the longer I work in travel, the more my values are developed or solidified. I was always like anti-plastic. Okay, anti-plastic, I can do that. Well, then it was like I realized the footprint of flying. Okay, that gets a little more challenging. Then it was like, okay, Airbnbs are bad, and it's like, okay, add that on top, and it's so many things that are ingrained in our society that are just not good. And which is why sustainable travel is not the default, because our lives are not sustainable by default. Plastic is all over the place in the grocery store. And like you said, taking the train is not simple, not cheap, not easy at all. I struggle all the time when I travel. I mean, right now I'm going to be traveling in August to Costa Rica to go to a conference, but I took a long time to decide if I was going to do that because I won't just go to Costa Rica for 3 days. And it's like, okay, what else can I tack on to that? What kind of research can I do? Who can I meet while I'm there? While I'm on that side of the Atlantic Ocean, can I, take any short flights and do any other kind of work while I'm over there? And this is actually how I ended up in India for 3 weeks last year. It started out with like a 4-day conference and I just kept like tacking things on. But quite frankly, if I am going to sit here and, say that I value sustainable tourism and that I believe we need to build this by default, then I need to try to embody that as well as I can in my life. It is not always possible. We did go overland this summer. My partner and I moved from Tunisia in North Africa to Bucharest, Romania. We took a boat over the Mediterranean. It's an overnight boat. And then we spent 6 weeks traveling by train through, mainland Europe to our new home. We had two cats that we were traveling with, and staying in hotels was just not going to be an option. We needed space. We had dietary requirements, so Airbnb was going to have to be the option. Because even trying to find other sort of accommodations that would be suitable for us was just not going to work. So I was disappointed by the fact that we had to do that. I was happy we were able to do some things. But for me, what I thought was most important on this journey is the acknowledgement that it is a journey. And so, I shared that on my social media accounts through Rooted as myself, just saying, hey, I'm an imperfect person living in a very imperfect world, doing my best. And here's what I did. Here's what I learned. Here's where I'd like to do better next time. Because again, going back to what we were just talking about with authenticity, is I am an imperfect human, and pretending that I am 100% living the words that I say all the time is definitely not true. And so I think we need to be forgiving with each other. I think we need to support each other when we can. And I think we need to do a much better job talking about the journey and the challenges of this. Because if we don't talk about the challenges, then people and companies don't realize they need to do a better job to show up and stand up and make it easier for, first of all, people who want to do these things. If we want to do it and we're struggling, imagine how challenging it is for, again, the travelers don't know what they don't know. So I think that the authenticity is important, to catalyze change, to challenge ourselves, and to share that journey across the industry with our followers, with our friends, and to think about it ourselves.
Yeah. What a beautiful awareness, or I guess a way of acknowledging that we can't always get it right, and the reason we can't is not always our fault. I know I judge myself. It's like you walk into the only store in the village you happen to be going through and everything's in a plastic bottle, right? And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this I am so heartbroken, and yet I am not the one who purchased the goods for this store. I am thirsty. I do need to
Mhm.
drink something. I have to make that choice." And I feel like when I make the one choice and buy the one water bottle that's plastic, everything I've done before has been erased, which isn't true, but it's the way that I am holding myself up to a standard that isn't ideal. And so I also imagine some people never start for fear of the failure, right? Because there is going to be failure along the way. And like you said, it's such a great way of examining this, is that it is a journey and we're all moving through these things. And the next thing that I wanted to talk to you about, that you and I kind of hit on as we prepared for this conversation, is how do we make it frictionless? Like you had said, if it isn't easy, who will do it? Like you were just saying, like the people that want this are feeling the struggle. The people who don't even know they want it, or maybe don't want it badly enough, are not going to make those choices. Like, how do we examine and find these gaps? How do we advocate for the change? Like, I know these are all huge questions, but like, what would this process look like? How would we start this dialogue as travelers, as industry professionals, to make these changes?
Well, I mean, this is why I'm a big advocate for sustainability by default, where the choice that is easiest and most natural to make is the sustainable option. Um, I'm not sure if you've had her on your show, but Melina Nikolova is the founder of Behavior Smart, and she focuses on human psychology and behavior, and works specifically with destinations on how to make sustainability the default option in tourism. So, I mean, this includes things like, when we remove the toiletries in hotel rooms, we put them at the front desk, and we instead put a little sign up that says, if you want these, come ask, we have them. Most people, like a very large majority of people, will not ask for them. The reason why people use them is because they are available. And the same thing is true at the buffet line. If you center the vegetarian options at the front, people are going to they're going to choose the vegetarian options. If you put the vegetarian options at the top of the menu, they're more likely to choose those than the ones at the bottom. It's simple human psychology that humans will take the path of least resistance. And this is why I often say that one of the things that is a huge problem in tourism is that when people, or when companies say that their climate action plan or their sustainability plan is to create awareness, that's not enough, because the knowledge behavior gap is a real thing. People can know that they shouldn't eat meat, or they should take the train, or whatever option. They know what they should do, but being able to take the action is often more difficult, more expensive, has a lot more friction. It is not the easy default option. So it is on the tourism industry, I believe, to create products, services, experiences that are sustainable by default, that are simply frictionless. Now, I say that, but what I really believe needs to happen is that we need to create products, services, experiences in society that are sustainable by default. Because again, tourism does not live in a silo, it is integrated in society. And we know that creating a great, sustainable, accessible place for people to live then rolls into being a great, accessible, sustainable place for people to visit. So, you know, going back to your question of how, that's how we do it. We make sustainability the default. How do we, as people interested in doing this in tourism, I mean, we talk to destinations, we tell tour operators that this is what we want. But the truth is that we need to be advocates in our own communities to ensure that public transportation is affordable, that it is accessible, that it is running on time, that it is clean and safe, so that people will default to using it versus driving a car. And by extension, then that becomes the option that travelers want to use. So I mean, we need to just be good, responsible citizens who are mindful of our fellow humans, of our communities, of the climate, and advocate for those things in our daily lives. And it will naturally roll over into tourism. We need it from the industry too, but we also need it from society in general.
Yeah. As you were speaking about that, I was kind of envisioning like this idea of this giant kind of container of water with all of these different contaminants, and you take the like one droplet out of it to examine it. So that's like tourism is this way that we're examining it, but it's in the whole water.
Yeah.
And so we can't really blame the drop that's in tourism for the whole water. And like you were saying, if the whole water is clean, then by default, the tourism is as well. And that is also, that's kind of why I think tourism is such a magical, it's just my favorite word. It maybe isn't magical at all. But such a powerful tool for creating this change is because it does intersect in so many ways. It gives us perspectives, but when it comes down to it, as travelers, we are only visiting, like you said, a place that exists outside of us. And so if it exists in a more inclusive and ethical and is addressing climate and all these things, travel inherently becomes what we want it to be. So it's a greater systemic issue that we're looking at across the globe, which then puts us both back in like our fetal position on the floor, because we realize the magnitude of what we really want for the world. The next and perhaps last thing here, one of the things we've talked about in making something frictionless is really is both looking for a way for taking action and then also serving and educating people who are not looking for this information. And you touched on this in the beginning that like you and I have both had this moment where we're realizing we're sitting in this space that feels comfortable, surrounded by people taking aligned actions. And we think everything's going great. And we're like, look at what we're creating. And it's like, you're in the conference center and you're in our little conference session. But if you like walked across the conference center and went into a different room, you realize that we haven't scratched the surface, which is maybe again, a back on the floor in the fetal position situation. But like, how do we give the ahas to the people who need the ahas? And I think you and I have also been in the situation where we're trying to put the education out there, and conference directors or communities or organizations are like, no, our people aren't asking for this. And we're saying they're not asking for it because they don't know that they want it. So how do we get this aha to the people who need the ahas and not those of us who are like, yeah, like we already had the aha and we're here for it all day long?
Well, I think this is where the power of cross-sector and cross-industry collaboration and co-creation is really important. You talk about being in this conference room where we're all patting each other on the back for the great things that we're doing. And, I would put a little asterisk on that and say, that's maybe not totally what we need to be doing. But I think that we all need to be breaking out of our silo and having these conversations in other spaces. It's no longer surprising to me. It was once surprising to me when I would have conversations with family, friends, other groups of people not involved with tourism, and just, I mean, mention anything related to the work that we do. And they're like, wait, what? You mean there's something other than Airbnb? You mean there's something other than booking.com? You mean I have a choice other than flying? Why wouldn't I buy the plastic bottle? We are so isolated in our spaces that I don't even think that we need to break out of the silo as tourism people, but just good, knowledgeable global citizens who are initiating conversations, showing up in spaces with people with diverse backgrounds, different professional backgrounds than we have, um, and demonstrating, acting, showing, being the change we want to be in the world when it comes to travel. But just as importantly, being open and listening and asking questions and learning from people who are in other professional spaces. Because you and I might know a lot about what it means to be a responsible traveler, or how to look for these choices, but I can't say that I know everything about being like a responsible architect, or being a responsible like fashion designer, or I read widely, I know some of these things, but there is a world of knowledge out there that I don't know. And so, how can we do that is show up, be our most responsible, best stewards of tourism, and be open to learning from those people who are great stewards of their own spaces as well.
Yeah, I love that. And it feels like a really great action item, because many people that listen to this podcast are tourism professionals, would be to just take one of your curiosities as a human and like explore that outside of the industry. And I was thinking right before you were saying, I don't have expertise here and here. I actually spent a year working for a company that was helping other businesses become LEED certified. So that was working in buildings.
Yep.
And then I have a cousin that is a designer, and she's really working within her company to try to figure out how to have more sustainable and ethical production of clothing. So like I do hear all these things, and I forget sometimes to apply that to this, my professional space. But I think also in a way to kind of fill our cup, like to entertain these other curiosities we have in our life and go to a meeting about sustainable architecture and building construction. Like it might give you some new vitality that you can also direct into the work you're doing now. And I think as humans, we also really need that that way to nurture and nourish and spark creativity and feed that curiosity. And so I think for those of you listening, this is a really great challenge. And I would love to hear back from you if you try this, if you just get curious about maybe sustainable food production or whatever it is that you have a curiosity about. Like actually, like you said, go find a conference or a webinar or a book and just see how that applies to the work that you're already doing.
Yeah, talk to the people who are doing it. If you're interested in sustainable, wineries, ask if you can spend a day job shadowing. I mean, what greater education? As travelers, we should be curious. So explore those things, both at home and when you travel. It's an amazing opportunity to learn and become, more thoughtful people. I love that
Yeah.
challenge. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Our time has flown by, and I hope our listeners don't feel like they just drank from a fire hose. But I always feel a little bit like that in the best way when you and I have conversations, because I'm just like, that's so interesting. That's so interesting. And I have to always go back and reflect a little. So I appreciate you always creating that space for me. Before we end our conversation, we have some rapid fire questions, which we can touch on. I know you did these a long time ago, but I'm sure none
Yeah,
of them,
I actually
they
don't
might be
even
different.
remember them. So I'm really curious to see what you have to ask here.
Yeah. Okay. So the first is, what are you reading right now?
Oh, I am reading like 3 books. Um, but I'm one of them is called 4321 by Paul Astor, which is 4 different stories of a boy growing up. Another one, I wish I could remember the title. It's like Bananas, Beaches, and something else, and it's a feminist perspective of colonialism in the tourism industry.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, you'll have
Yep.
to send me
I'll
that
I'll
because I'll
send you the
include it in the
title
show
because
notes.
I can't remember. It's kind of a long title, but it's really interesting. Dive into that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What is always in your suitcase or backpack when you travel?
Reusable water bottle, reusable coffee mug. And actually, I have a little set of like bamboo silverware or cutlery. I basically just carry everything so nobody has to give me anything ever when I travels.
I get into that point too, and then I'm like, okay, maybe we don't literally need to carry everything
Everything.
everywhere.
I
Yeah.
try use I you know, I try to use it as a learning opportunity though. Somebody said to me once, I don't take my mug because a lot of places say they won't refill the mug. And I said, but if enough people ask, maybe they'll change their policy. So I keep asking.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, to sojourn to me means to travel somewhere with the respect as if you live there. Where would you still love to sojourn?
Um I now I'm living back in Eastern Europe again, and there are so many places here where I would love to um, just slow travel. So honestly, there are a lot of long trails. There's a new one called the Via Transylvania that goes across Romania, and I want to slow travel and sojourn in my own country.
Yeah.
There, I don't have to go far, actually.
Yeah, and I feel like walking those long distance trails are such a unique way to be really immersed. I really wanted to walk the Jordan Trail. That's on my
Yeah.
list of experiences that I wish for someday. What is something you eat that immediately connects you to a place you've been?
Um, I'm not much of a foodie. Let's see, what is something I eat that reminds me of a place I've been? Anytime I have a flatbread, I feel like there's a flatbread or a tortilla kind of thing of some sort in every culture. And so I feel like whenever I have that, flatbread of some sort, often takes me back to the place where I first had it, whether it, is when I was traveling a lot in South America or in India or wherever. So I would say flatbreads are often the thing that kind of takes me back.
Thanks. Who was a person that inspired or encouraged you to set out to travel the world?
Oh, my dad. As a little kid, I used to travel with him on his business trips when like 3 and under would travel for free. And he used to take me with him. And so I don't remember these trips, but he tells me stories about them. So yeah, my dad seeded my love of travel for me.
If you could take an adventure with one person, fictional or real, alive or past, who would it be?
Probably my sister, just because she's so tied up at work right now. She's a lot going on. We used to take sister vacations every year, but it's been many, many years since we were able to take one. So I would love to be able to tear her away from her work and her life long enough where there were no repercussions and go on an adventure with her.
Yeah, I'm buying for a sister vacation. I don't know that my sister and I have ever traveled alone together, with the exception of a funeral service, um, which outside of the service, we had a great time together traveling, but I would love to have that experience with
Yeah.
her.
Yeah.
Last question. As you know, Soul of Travel is a space for recognizing and celebrating women in the tourism industry. Who is one woman you would love to recognize in this space?
Okay, so I have to give you a little bit of backstory. This weekend, at this conference I went to, this woman named Allison McAdams stood on the stage, and she's been an editor in podcasting and audio radio for like 25 years, has produced amazing shows. And she stood on the stage and said, I'm not used to standing in front of huge crowds because I'm usually behind the scenes. And so I think we don't do a good enough job across the tourism industry celebrating the people behind the scenes who are our cheerleaders and our supporters. So I actually want to shout out two people, if that's okay. The first is Tammy Fairweather, who has always shown up, comments, signs up, cheerleads, huge ally, big advocate. And she's not there for the spotlight, but she has been a friend and a colleague and a major cheerleader of my work for many, many years. And I also want to shout out Ann Becker, who, again, incredible advocate for all the work that I've done, has asked the hard questions sometimes and kind of given me the spotlight in conversations when she has so much to share. And I am so incredibly thankful for all the women in the industry who aren't the people that we're interviewing on podcasts, who don't make the list, who aren't nominated for the awards, because quite frankly, without them, the rest of us would not be here. So I just want to, snaps all around to those people who are behind the scenes, because they're the ones that allow the leaders and the people who are speaking and the ones who we all see, it allows us to show up. So, yeah.
Thank you so much. And to of my favorite humans in travel. And what a good reminder for me to keep looking outside of the people that we always see, to talk to the people that we don't always see. I really appreciate that. And I really appreciate you. Thank you so much for being here and coming back to the podcast to share with us today.
Thank you so much for having me again, Christine. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to Soul of Travel, presented by Journeywoman. I hope you enjoyed the journey. If you loved this conversation, I encourage you to subscribe and rate the podcast. Please share episodes that inspire you with others, because this is how we extend the impact of this show. Learn more about each of my guests by reading our episode blogs, which are more than your average show notes. I think you'll love the connection. Find our episode blogs at www.souloftravelpodcast.com. I am so proud of the way these conversations are bringing together people from around the world. If this sounds like your community, welcome. I am so happy you are here. I am all about community and would love to connect. You can find me on Facebook at Soul of Travel Podcast, or follow me on Instagram either at she.sojourns or at Soul of Travel Podcast. Stay up to date by joining the Soul of Travel Podcast mailing list. You'll also want to explore the Journeywoman community and its resources for women travelers over 50. I'd also like to share a quick thank you to my podcast producer and content magician, Carly Eduardo, CEO of Convergente. I look forward to getting to know you and hopefully hear your story.